Welcome to The Riff. Today on The Riff, Jeremy and Justin sit down and discuss crucial conversations. I wonder if the conversation they have in this episode would be considered crucial. I can't wait to find out. We hope today is helpful.
Hello, Riff listeners. Good to have you with us today as we're recording episode 107.
This is 107.
This is great.
Yeah.
So
new territory.
Over under on 105, I think, is where Vegas had set the line originally.
And it was a strong line. Yeah. Very heated
And that
debate.
is not a promotion of DraftKings or anything else, which, by the way, it is fantasy football season coming up. And so I hope you're locked and loaded. Glad to have you with us on this episode. We are coming at you live. Well, we're live. I don't know. This is not streamed live.
No.
Okay, we're coming at you recorded from a very muggy afternoon or morning here.
I would say relative humidity. I feel that my comfortable zone is about 50%.
Yeah. And would we be north of that?
I'd say we're double that.
Yeah.
Because it's pretty moist.
It is 100% inside my shirt right now. I will say that. So, but yeah, it's a little humid. So, and I'm just noticing right now that we don't have hydration supplies with us. Missed sponsorship opportunity and maybe a missed medical opportunity as well. So, we're going to go as long as we can handle this today. But I'm excited to walk through a book that I've been rereading recently. And I say rereading because it's been a long time since I read it.
Mother Goose?
Yeah.
I know, man. I'm excited too, man.
I always thought she was the same as the one with 100 kids in the shoe. But that's Mother Hubbard, I believe.
Oh.
Are you familiar with Mother Hubbard?
I don't think
100
so.
kids?
I don't think so.
Oh, my word.
Giant shoe.
Yeah.
No.
It's, I think it's something that should be looked into.
Okay.
But this one is called Crucial Conversations, and interesting book. We'll put that in the show notes there. And what I'm enjoying about this book is I know it's written for a business work type of setting, but I can't help but think through so many settings. Clearly, it helps in any type of work relationship and things that we're involved in here. But the concepts of this, how to have conversations that are maybe tough topics, or navigating some tough waters in conversations, navigating conflict. I keep reading it through the lens of relationships, through marriage, through parenting, through any type of situation. So I wanted to take some time today, and obviously in this podcast, there will be times where we do stories, interviews, theology, mission, vision of our church, behind the scenes stuff, but also leadership is a big part of it too. And so today I want to talk about just some crucial conversations.
And with this, I feel like you can pair this conversation. If you were going to make a riff entree.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a conversation we had on tension.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a conversation we had on power. I think both of those kind of go hand in hand with this because there's going to be a lot of those themes that come up within this, especially going through that book of like tension's okay. Yeah. And power needs to be handled accordingly, right? Like accordingly, is that right? Power needs to be handled accordingly. Hitherto.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know if that's how you use that word.
That's how you use it.
Yeah, and it sounded right. It sounded good.
I think it sounded good. I don't use it well enough to confront you on it.
No. Well, I'm saying it with passion.
Yes,
and I think that if you just do
conviction.
Conviction. Yeah, well, should I say passion in that?
I would say conviction.
Oh, okay.
Because you weren't loud about it, but you were believable.
Yeah, that's true.
In it.
Those two conversations probably helpful along with this one. So walk us through a couple things.
Okay, so the basic premise of the book, Crucial Conversations, is that you need to be able to navigate conversations, and so I think one is you can some weaknesses of being in conversations that are tough, and it could be about conflict or any type of conflict. There's two different types of ways that we can negatively respond or maybe naturally respond to conflict. One is silence, one is violence. And he talks about this both being negative. And there's some inventory in there to be able to figure out, do I tend to, when I'm uncomfortable in a conversation, go towards silence, or do I tend to go towards violence? And it describes silence as a couple of things. One, silence doesn't literally mean being quiet. Sometimes it's in the form of sarcasm. Is basically silence is I'm trying to get out of this conversation. And so whether I try and quickly just agree so I can leave the room, whether maybe I just shut down completely because I'm offended, I'm hurt, I don't feel respected in this moment, I feel attacked in this moment, anything like that. I feel annoyed, I'm going to shut it down. I just withdraw. So silence. The other is violence. And it doesn't mean I'm picking up, a stapler and I'm going to shoot it at you. It just means I'm going to now try and intimidate. I'm going to keep reinforcing the things I said because whoever's on the other side is so dumb they didn't understand it, so let me say it louder and slower. Or I'm going to be threatening. I'm going to resort to power. And again, we talked about this in the previous episode of me walking Millie the dog with a leash, and how Janaea wants the torso connected to the leash, and I'm fine with just the collar because the collar is quite effective if I want it to go where I want it to go. And it's terrible, right? But that would be a sense of violence in a conversation. I'm going to use my power as a parent. As a parent, my kid doesn't do what I want them to do. Do I shut down and hope they get my cues and I hope they see that, man, I didn't mean to hurt mom and dad's feelings. I better change my way. Or do I resort to violence? Not literally, but just this is what I said to do it right now. Don't make me count to 3, and just getting louder and more aggressive, So anyway, so part of it was just this exploration of, am I a silence person or a violence person? I think that's helpful for all of us.
What are you? I'm going to throw it. Are you going to go with me first?
I'm going to start with you first.
Oh, man. Yeah. Just know I'm going to throw it back to you. Okay?
Oh, I can't wait. I want
you to be an active listener, but I also want you to think about what your answer is going to be.
Okay.
Natural tendency is going to be silence for me.
So what are the types of things that would shut you down in a conversation?
Oh, man. I think if somebody is coming at me in a violent way, right? And again, not like physically harming, right, but in that kind of a tone, I'm just not part of that. I don't like that. I can get into it if I need to. I worked with my father for a long time. He is definitely on the opposite spectrum of me. So I've been in those situations and I can get back to it and get back at it with that. But in anything that comes my way that way, I immediately, which actually furthers it along, hit it with sarcasm.
Yeah.
Hit it with a joke. Try to make people laugh.
Why in the moment when you feel uncomfortable, why would you want to try to make people laugh?
I think I become more cognizant of it, but I think that I don't, or didn't, still probably don't, have a great ability to find out what kind of tension it is. So I think the laugh gives me time to process because I'm comfortable in laughter. I'm comfortable in that kind of a space. So I think those moments give me time to process what kind of tension is this? What are they coming at me with? What is happening right now? So I think that's probably why I revert to that, because I just don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And I'm comfortable in that space. I'm comfortable with us all laughing. I'm comfortable with you thinking I'm funny. Yeah. I hope you like me at the end of the day. Like all of that kind of stuff, right? So I think that's probably why I tend to go that way. What are you?
Well, I'm the same way. Silence for me, in the sense of I could withdraw. I think of this like in my marriage. I will tend to be the most immature that I could think of when I evaluate this. Is if Leanne and I are disagreeing, rarely do I get louder, demanding. I tend to, and my parents would say this all the time when I was growing up, that I would pout. I hated the word pout. But what I look at now as I evaluate that, it's always been a tendency in my life, the immature portion, when I don't like my circumstance, to pout, is to get silent. And so I see this in my marriage where I'll be like, I'll just withdraw. Right. And that means I'm checking out, I'm leaving, right? Where's dad? Okay. But it's more of, okay, if you're going to interrupt me when we're having a conversation, that's fine. I'll just stop talking. And then if you notice that I stop talking and you ask about it, like, it's no big deal. It's no big deal. It's not that important. And why do I do that? I think what I want them to think is, oh my word, I have been so out of control in this conversation, and Jeremy clearly is handling this so well, and he's so calm. I must get the golden nuggets that were about to come out of his mouth, and somehow I interrupted them. Now, Leanne is completely fine, just being like, okay. Right? If I shut down and then say, hey, if you want to have a conversation, we can have a conversation. And so I know that it's not effective when I'm silent. I don't know why I do that. With my kids, sometimes I flip it. Sometimes maybe it's positional, where I'll feel like, okay, I'll just get louder and just more demanding. But then there are times I still look at and say, in a sick way, I kind of want them to feel bad for me. So thinking in my mind, they're going to come running after me, right? Like, and here's how it could play out for me is if I start thinking like, well, they haven't texted me. Well, I wonder how long I can go without texting them and see if they notice, right? That stuff's not endearing as a leader, but I can find my natural tendency is to do that. In a work setting, it's silence as well. In a work setting, it would be, if I could sense this conversation is making the person on the other side of the table feel awkward, my tendency is to encourage. And encouragement, while is a great tool when someone needs strength to attempt something, is a terrible tool to pull someone out of discomfort when perhaps they need to be in discomfort. If we're talking about a quarterly expectation, for me to encourage you at the wrong time in the wrong thing softens the blow. And sometimes I use a godly gift to serve a personal need to make sure this conversation doesn't feel awkward for the both of us. And so that's how silence, for me, kind of.
Which is interesting, because I feel like I'm on the same spectrum, the side of it. And for me, when I started like leading people, leading teams, I would start to encourage, but it would just like prolong the conversation. So then I didn't like it. So then I'm like, no, I want to be like, I just want to be over with. Like, I want this conversation to be done. So now I'm in a space where I'm like really maybe too quick at times just to say what's going on, because I want to be silent. I just want to say, this is it. This is what's happening. So it's interesting. You like both of us want that silence, and but it comes out differently. It's interesting.
A bummer too, though, and part of it may be Enneagram. And I know we just did a master class with Dr. Swift, and we're both Enneagram 3s. And what we learn about the Enneagram 3 is when we're stressed or uncomfortable is another way to say it. When we're uncomfortable, we tend to go to the unhealthy side of the 9 as a 3. And so which is the unhealthy side of let's be a peace faker, not a peacemaker. And so for us, when we're uncomfortable, to understand naturally, you and I are both going to say, how do we use sarcasm to sidestep this awkwardness? How do we use false encouragement or just true encouragement at the inappropriate time to sidestep a conversation? And it comes across as deceptive.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we still need to deal with what we need to deal with. We just didn't deal with it in front of you. We'll just deal with it now after the meeting, which is terrible leadership, right? Terrible leadership. And so rereading this book has been helpful to say, now, for me, like, man, this is my tendency. We all, and again, if you heard me, you are listening. So as you're listening,
they might not be.
Hey, wake up. Okay. So now that you're listening, ask yourself, which of those, because you can't say, well, I am perfect. I'm just this weird natural hybrid of perfection between the two. Do you tend to go towards silent, withdraw from the conversation, leave the room, fake a phone call, whatever you need to do when you're awkward? Do you tend to use sarcasm as a bait and just to get out of there, to dodge something? Do you tend to be more violent? And again, don't let the definition of violence talk you out of identifying yourself. It could be just being more aggressive, sticking to the facts, but just doing it louder. And so ask yourself which is more. And there's an inventory in the book, but so that's helpful.
Here's you've given homework before. I'm going to give one. Okay. So I think it's helpful to ask yourself that, but I think a great way to gain self-awareness is to gain awareness of others about you. Okay. So I think a great next step would be to get into a space, have this type of conversation with somebody that you're in crucial conversations with a high majority of the time.
Yeah.
And then ask them the question, what do I come across as?
Yeah.
Because I think that I can say all of this, and then I have a conversation with Jamie, and she's like, you're super violent. I'm like, oh, I might need to reassess what I think about myself.
Right.
Because it's not coming across that way of what I think, right? So I think it'd be super helpful to ask somebody in your sphere, how do I come across?
Yeah, I love that. So, so as we think about this, what I want to do is I want to talk about like, what are the goals of crucial conversations, and then what are some tools that we can go to work in. So the goals of crucial conversations, according to this book, number one is to have to go after mutual purpose. What's the mission? So when I'm having a tough conversation, it's important to establish what is our mutual desire here. And sometimes when we have a tough conversation, we assume we're on opposite sides. We have opposite perspectives, for sure, of why we're at where we're at or what needs to happen. But if we can establish what is the mutual goal, so if it's running late to a kid's soccer game and you're having this crucial conversation with your 7-year-old, what's the ultimate goal? We want to be there on time. Okay, that's the ultimate goal. Right now, we're enemies because you have to find your shoe and I have to, these kind of things. So what's our ultimate goal? Let's recognize same team. Okay, and then second thing is I need to not only have a shared goal. We need to be guardians of respect. So let's guard the goal and guard the respect in this relationship. That we say this mission is so important. Now, how we discuss and we strategize how we figure out this mission, we have to do it in a respectful way. And so I can't do pot shots. I can't withdraw. I can't belittle. I can't do these things, whether silence or violence. I have to say, I've got to do this with respect. And so if I can approach this conversation, whether it's at work, whether it's, it could be talking about in a marriage relationship, it could be talking about physical intimacy. It could be talking about finances. It could be talking about the most vulnerable areas of your life. And you might be different than your spouse in this season. And you say, okay, what is our goal? Okay. And then let's guard our goal. And then let's guard the respect we have towards each other. Now, sometimes you just have different goals. And then you just got to walk through it. And then you got to figure out, is there a way we end up with the same goal? If not, there's a whole lot of things. But most people parachute out of a relationship or a job because this conversation isn't navigated well. And so those are the two things. So I don't know. I don't know anything that lands with you. And we'll get into what are some things we could do in crucial conversations as tools. But when you think of like a shared goal, when you think of shared respect, what jumps out to you about that? Yeah. Why do you think this is important? Have you seen anything like that?
Yeah, I think goals are probably going to be an easier piece to walk through because they're so objective, right?
Yes.
Because I think you can see, this is what I want. Is this what you want? Right? Respect, on the other hand, is going to be subjective. This is how I want to feel respected, right? So there's feelings involved. So my idea of respect and your idea of respect could differ greatly, right? So I think that's probably the most important conversation, is to find out, what does respect look like in this relationship, right? Because I could be giving something that I feel is respectful and you completely take that as disrespectful, right? So I think that it's not just respect is to be nice. Respect is not to yell, right? Well, I think the small nuances that you're talking about are respect as well, right? There's these small pieces that, how did that make you feel? And you say that a lot. You've said that a ton of times, just in leading people, leading me, of like, how'd that come across? Like, how did you receive that? And I think it's such a helpful question because it gives insight to my words. Like, I can't control how you feel. My words can't control how you feel, but I need to be aware of what they're doing.
Yeah.
I need to be aware of how they're coming across and vice versa, right? So I think that's probably, for me, and it has been, the most important part of conversations, specifically when I think of like my marriage, like our goal stuff. I'm like, hey, you want this? I want that. Okay, does it look like, okay, cool. Yeah, great. The other side of it's like, okay, how do we get there? Which is so difficult. Working in an organization, working at a church, we all really have the same goal.
Yeah.
You would think that every church is like the easiest place to work. Like, Yeah, I want people to meet Jesus. I want their lives to be changed by him. I want my life to be changed by him. Same goal? Awesome.
Yeah.
This is the best job ever. But somehow we get caught up in the respect part and the how part. So I think that side for me has been the most difficult side compared to the goal side.
Yeah, the idea of respect is even if there's confusion on the goal, if there's this guarding of respect, there could be curiosity then of, talk to me about that.
Right.
Wide open if at the end of the day we need to change this goal. And Leanne and I have had, I think of finances forever, almost every month, the first 7 years of our marriage. We had the same goal. The goal was to not go bankrupt in the first 7 years of our marriage. and it was a month by month, evaluation of that goal, right? And we quickly we realized the goal wasn't being met, like our goal of having this much margin, our goal of, and so when we realized we weren't hitting the goal, all of a sudden, that's when we started feeling this pressure of, is it my fault? Is it your fault? If I can make it your fault, or if I can even just say the goal's stupid, whatever I have to do to stop looking at this, and respect is what we had to guard. And I was terrible at it because I felt like, well, we have this shared goal, and it would be silly, like literal, it'd be like, well, you are the one that went grocery shopping and groceries is over budget. So you have sabotaged our goal, right? And so what a dumb weight to put.
As you're eating
I'm
those
the
groceries.
one eating it. Yeah.
As you're opening the bag of chips, you're like, how dare you?
Complaining about dinner.
Yeah. And they're not even Ruffles.
Yeah.
How dare you?
I'm not here for some great value Lays, right? Potato wafers. And so what happened is I had this superiority of, I established a goal and I didn't overpay our house payment this month, right? And so what happened is the respect, I felt this weird superiority that I'm trying to guard the goal, wasn't guarding respect. And the truth is I felt like a peon when it came to being a husband, because I'm like, I'm making my wife feel terrible. And I just didn't know how to handle this. I know that our goal is so important. I had emotion to it. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know how to handle that. And so I wish I would have read this a long time ago. And so anyway, so goals. So a couple tools. One is to recognize recognize that wherever we are, whether it's silence or violence, when we act in those ways, in an unhealthy way, by withdrawing or using sarcasm, what we are is we're disrespecting the other person. Mm-hmm. And so if I'm aware of that, even as a parent, it's not enough to say, hey, I'm the boss of you. But when I'm able, and it doesn't mean you hand over the keys to, creating boundaries and expectations, but it means we do it with respect. So here's a couple tools that I got out of this book. Number one is this, to watch for it in a conversation, to understand that, hey, crucial conversations are important. They help us go forward. But a lot of times people feel unsafe. Even if it's nothing that you're saying to make them feel unsafe, people will naturally feel unsafe when there's tension. And so to watch for it and to try and recognize it right in the middle of it and saying, hey, is what I'm saying making you feel unsafe? And if we're having a conversation about last quarter's baptism goals, if we're talking as spiritual as possible, baptism goals, and we didn't hit it, and I'm saying, hey, Justin, we're working through all these systems of the church, we didn't hit our baptism goals, and you start responding like, well, I'm doing all this, and I'm trying to put a Nixa building together, and we've had all this. I'm like, whoa, okay. I could sense you're feeling unsafe. Like, this is not a conversation about, are you bringing value to the team? This is not a conversation of, is Justin employed at North Point Church? This is a conversation of our baptism goals. And I want to make sure I'm not bringing anything else to the table. And I want all of you at this table. Can we talk about this? Is there anything that I'm bringing out that's making you feel, And so I think to recognize not everyone automatically is fully at the table. Some of them are wondering what's under the table. And if you can just be aware of that, help recognize that. And how do you recognize it? Well, when you see people go silent or violent, defending, pointing, sarcasm. So say, hey, no, I really don't want to get away from that, right? Like, yeah, let's say we're having a meeting and we're talking about some practical things we're talking about right now, Saturday nights. Okay, so we're talking about, we think Saturday nights is a great tool for people to be able to experience the weekend.
They are, 5 o'clock Saturday.
5 o'clock, Saturday
That's right,
nights.
Saturday nights.
Nixa, Springfield. Starting September 10th.
That's right.
So, 9th.
Well, 9th is Saturday, yeah.
Which, by the way, we're excited about Nixa.
I know.
Bottom line, though, is we're having this conversation. And like, how do we get the word out, right? There's not a lot of opportunities around this area for Saturday night services. How do we get the word out? Well, if someone has an idea to say, oh, yeah, that'd be a great idea. If we just do that idea, we send out a hot air balloon. That's a great idea. Everyone will start coming on Saturday nights. Okay. One, we can all have a good old, laugh about it and then say, hey, here's the deal, though. Are you making fun of that idea because you really don't think it works? Is that your way of saying it's a dumb idea? If that's not what you meant, I just want to be aware that might shut down, this person who suggested that. It is not a dumb idea, right? Or, hey, can we all agree that was a dumb idea? Are you fine with that? That was a dumb idea, okay? Whatever it is, but just be aware of that as you navigate. Because the last thing you want to do is all of a sudden you're down a man on this meeting now. And now, and then what happens is we get funny, nice people who end up sabotaging the meeting. And we don't know why. So we got to recognize it in the middle of this conversation. So it's just if we're aware that we do it, and now we look for that in the meeting, and then we got to intervene. Okay, so we just got to intervene and say and have the guts. And this is where I'm committed to growing. Is in the middle of the meeting when I see it, instead of just log it into here's another reason why that person shouldn't be in that meeting. I should just say it. Just say, hey, what do you mean by that? Matter of fact, I don't think that was helpful. And I don't mean that to say a character attack. I'm just saying in this meeting, this is what we need. Right? And so let's get back to it, right? Is sometimes your encouragement, sometimes your sarcasm, sometimes your put down, your belittlement, those things will really sabotage the meeting. And I want to make sure right now we're all good. Let's do a temperature check and let's keep going. And then if that turns into an issue, just say, hey, I feel like me saying that shut you down. Is that the case? Let's talk about this, right? Because this is the goal. This is what we all want. This is what I'm seeing. How do we go there? What are some things that we can notice as a parent, right? That aren't apparent as a parent, right? That we need to watch for. What are signs that our kids need us to help provide safety for them?
Well, I think as a kiddo, you're in constant, your world is unsafe. There's just changes with every season. And by every season, I mean every 6 months. Their little bodies are going through changes. Their minds are going through changes. Their brain is not fully formed. It's crazy, right? So I think that the biggest thing to notice, at least for Jamie and I, has been they mirror a lot of things. So when we are dysregulated, they are. Right. So a lot of times, one of the things that we'll look at is if they're dysregulated or they're getting into a situation to where they're just acting crazy, before anything happens, one of our things is let's just check ourselves first.
Okay.
Right. And it happens at work too. Mirror neurons are real. People really do react that way. So you're saying in a work setting, somebody that's doing that with a sarcastic comment, the room laughs for a reason.
Yeah.
There's a shared experience, but the bad thing is that it's laughing at somebody else's expense, right? It's not laughing with each other, it's laughing at someone. So the same thing when we're looking at this whole situation with kiddos is that how can I partner with them, right? Yeah. How can because they're going to mirror me. They're going to. That's not the option, that's not the conversation. They're going to mirror you. So how do I partner with them and show them the safe part of this whole conversation, the safe aspect of this conversation or this environment, whatever they're dealing with, you've got to recognize that if they're scared, there's probably something scared inside of you, right? There's something going on. If they're anxious about something, it's probably because you're anxious. It really is. And I know that sounds very primal and very elementary, but
or natural.
That's exactly right. We're walking through a thing right now with the next school year. Jamie and I are nervous about a couple of things. And it's just interesting to watch for Lily specifically, the oldest one. And it's interesting to see that she's nervous about them as well. I'm like, oh,
yeah.
Yes. I mean, I know you're nervous about a new school year, but our nervousness and our anxiousness are definitely impacting her, right?
Yeah.
And it's okay to be anxious, but now we're trying to show her what to do with that anxiousness. So I think that's the big thing with kiddos is noticing that in them. You're probably going to need to notice that in yourself as well.
Yeah. I like that a lot. One of the things I think of in Scripture, how Jesus navigated just even Peter. Which, side note, The Chosen is amazing. I don't think we've talked about that.
Listen, you're like the 7th person that has said something about that. I have not watched it.
It's on Netflix right now. You can go to Netflix.
I have not watched it.
I'll say this about The Chosen. The most endearing Jesus character I've ever seen portrayed.
Really?
So good. And he's got a cool backstory too, of the character, not Jesus, but Jesus got a cool one too, man. He was in heaven, crazy.
He's like the son of God. It's a crazy deal.
So one, I recommend that, random. But one of the things I think of Jesus' interaction with Peter is there was a time when Peter responded to tension with violence. He lopped off some dude's ear. And Jesus could have been like, dang. And then talked about Peter. He's kind of a hothead. You want to watch him. And he just addressed it right in the moment, healed the dude's ear. Say, hey, it's not time for swords. Another time, it was when Peter felt the tension after he had betrayed Jesus. He shows up to the breakfast Jesus had cooked, and it was silence. And Jesus says, hey, let me ask some questions to draw something out. Do you love me? Do you love me? And he kept pulling. And I think one of the great leadership lessons that we can have is observe, be curious, and then draw out. Course correct as needed. Do it in a loving way, not in a shameful way. And I think that'll be helpful. So I know that all of us have people that mean a lot to us, whether it's because of an org chart, because of a family tree, because of a vow. We all have people that mean a lot to us. And tension will come and go. What if we can be aware of the dysfunctional nature we bring to the table, recognize it, lead through that, and then even recognize that and help create we talk about a safe place for people to find and follow Jesus. What if we create a safe place for people to experience deep relationship wholeness in any relationship? So I'd encourage you, if you never read the book, this is our poor interpretation of the book, but the book notes will be there. The book will be in the show notes as well. But I think if we just are all grace-filled, tender-hearted, curious people, I believe we're best positioned to navigate difficult conversations. So I think it'd be helpful.
It's great. My shirt is 100% stuck to me.
Yeah. Oh, this is.
Feels like wearing spandex all over right now.
Yeah.
It's a treat.
Which, you are, ironically, from the waist down wearing spandex. So, but hey, thanks for traveling through another episode of The Riff. And we really appreciate this opportunity with you. Have a great week, and let's put this in practice.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Riff. We'll have a brand new episode every week, wherever you find podcasts.